Hey everyone, Kristen here from Wild Birds Unlimited in Barrie and Newmarket, and today I'm going to be talking nest boxes. So it's early March here, and you can see behind me the snow is melting and winter is on its way out, spring's on its way in, and that's when we think about hanging nest boxes, both for the species that are here year-round, but also for migrants. So for the species that are here year-round, they begin looking for places to nest and investigating places they may want to raise their families. And of course we want the boxes to be out nice and early as well for spring migrants as they come through. So I have a few nest boxes here, and I wanted to show you about some of the features you should look for when purchasing or making a nest box. First of all, the nest box should be appropriate size for the type of bird that you want to attract. So for example, this is a triple woodpecker box. It's a lot longer than a chickadee or nuthatch box would be, because those birds are a lot larger, like hairy red belly and red-headed woodpeckers, and they need more space to raise their family. So make sure the size is correct for the species you're trying to attract. Also, just as important, make sure the hole size is the right size. So for example, on our chickadee box here, we have a hole size of 1 1/8. That would be suitable for chickadees and house wrens, but it would exclude other birds like white-breasted nuthatches, downy woodpeckers, and so you want to make sure that the box that you're putting out is appropriate for the habitat around your house, the birds you see, and the birds you want to invite to live here. So in addition to the proper size of box and the proper hole size, you also want to make sure that your nest box has ventilation. That's really important to make sure that the babies don't get too warm in there during those hot summer and spring days. Also, there should be an easy way to clean your nest box out. You want to have a door that allows for opening and cleaning about once a season after the birds have finished raising their young. You also want to make sure that there's some way for the babies to get out. So in some nest boxes, there's actually a ladder here, which is usually like a wire mesh or a plastic coated wire mesh where the babies can use to climb out of the nest box. However, if you're using a rough cut wood like this box here, that should be just fine, and you could use something to score it a little bit on the inside just to give them some extra grip. You should have a good hanger, a good way of hanging that box, and in addition, you probably want another way to stabilize it to make sure the wind doesn't blow it around too much. So there's actually a hole down here for a screw as well. You want to make sure that the rain stays out and those babies stay as dry as possible. So having a roof that's sloped or angled away from the entrance hole is really important, as is drainage. So you might be able to see here on the bottom, there's 4 little holes in the corner of this box that allow for rainwater to exit if it enters in the box. There's a couple other tricks and tips I want to give you. So depending on what species you want to attract and where you're hanging your box, you may want to consider a guard that goes around the whole of the box. So some nest boxes come without a guard, and that's okay. You could put this box out as is. However, you may have a red squirrel in your neighborhood that decides that they want to nest in the box, and they might chew and enlarge that hole so that they can fit inside. To prevent that from happening, we use something called predator guards or nest box guards. So here's an example. This one's metal, and I've just put it outside of this nuthatch box so that the nuthatch box hole size of 1 1/4 stays that way and doesn't get any bigger. They also can come in slate, so this gives a lot of durability along with the metal ones. Make sure that nothing's going to chew through that slate to make that hole size bigger. And they also come in wood, so there's wood ones as well. The wood ones might get chewed if something is determined enough, but the wood also might be enough just to discourage that animal, a little too much work for them, and keep them at bay. You can also get longer extensions that go on the outside of the box. We call that a predator guard, and what that does is it just enlarges the hole, elongates it, so that predators like raccoons can't stick their hands down into the box and take the babies out. Another tip I want to give you is about wasps. So wasps and hornets can be a real problem in nesting in boxes that aren't being used, or maybe getting in there ahead of the birds. And so to help stop that problem, what I have here is a bar of soap, and I've just got it sitting in a little bit of water. And I'll be putting this nest box out very soon, actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open that nest box. Another reason why a really large door comes in handy. And the soap that's just been soaking, I'm going to use to kind of put on the top of the box. I'm just rubbing the bar on the top of the box and along the sides as well. And so that surface now has a soapy covering. And what that means is it's going to be very difficult for animals like paper wasps to adhere their nest to the top or the top side of the box, and it will discourage them from using these boxes before the birds do, or abandoned boxes. It's not a whole lot of fun at the end of the season when you want to clean out your nest box and you go in there and there's a nest full of wasps. Of course, you could wait until the colder weather hits, but it might be easier just to try and keep them out to begin with in using the soap trick. That seems to work pretty well. I used it on a lot of my boxes last year, and I haven't noticed any wasps in there, but you may need to reapply it if that soapy surface kind of wears off over time. So remember that not all birds will use birdhouses to raise their families. Only those species that nest in tree cavities in the wild will use a nest box to raise a family. Also, birds are very specific about the habitat they want you to put the nest box in, how high it's hung, what direction it faces, and also how close it is to other birdhouses. Some of those things are some of the biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to hanging their nest boxes. So to be successful, make sure that the nest box that you're putting out is in the right habitat for the species you want to attract. We'd all love bluebirds, but not everybody lives near open farmland or fields here in Ontario to be able to get them at their birdhouses. The nest box behind me, we hung last year, and we had a red-breasted nuthatch family move in right after we hung it. And part of the reason we were successful is because it's in pine trees, which is their preferred habitat. Another reason it was successful is because we hung it to the appropriate height. So some birds are pretty easy. Chickadees and wrens, you can get away with hanging your nest box about 5 feet off the ground. For nuthatches, I did 10 feet, and they seem to like it. But some species like barred owls, pileated woodpeckers, and screech owls, we have all 3 of those boxes here, and we had to get on a ladder and hang those boxes 20 feet up a tree. And we did so also with safety equipment on. So keep in mind, depending on what box you're putting out, you may need a ladder to hang it, and you may need some safety equipment. Nobody wants to fall 20 feet out of a tree. That's not safe, so make sure you're hanging them safely as well. In terms of direction, the majority of birds want their birdhouse to face south or east, and that's to take advantage of morning sun to warm up their babies. But some species, like, for example, barred owls, really don't care what direction that nest box faces because it's deep in the forest and it doesn't really matter that much to them. Also, spacing. Birds don't typically like to nest too close to each other. So for example, for this nest box, I have another red-breasted nuthatch box to put out, but I'm gonna put it about 50 feet in the other direction so that I give this family enough space from another nuthatch family. Remember not to treat your nest box with any paint or stain, especially on the inside. You wanna leave that bare and safe for your birds. And also remember that many species like nesting materials such as wood chips. Actually, a lot of birds want wood chips in that box. It gives them a nice place to put their nest on to raise a family. So for this nuthatch box behind me, I'm gonna clean out that nesting box this week and add a layer of about 5 inches of wood chips. And these should be replaced every single year. So make sure you're cleaning out your nest boxes and putting new wood chips in there. So 5 inches is pretty good for nuthatches and chickadees, but some species want a whole lot more wood chips. For example, downy woodpeckers and pileatids and flickers, they want the entire box full of wood chips because they want to feel like they've done some work for their family. And what this helps to do for those species is they'll excavate their nests in the wild, taking out bits of wood and making it the proper depth and all those things. And by packing the box with wood chips, you're giving them a little bit of excavation to do to make them feel like they fitted the box to their family's needs. Also, you want to keep birdhouses away from bird feeders. Nesting birds don't really like a whole lot of activity from other species, so make sure if you have a pole system with your bird feeders out that your nesting box isn't too close. I would aim to get it about 40-50 feet away from a feeding station if possible. So there you have it. There's some tricks and tips for nesting birds. Remember, don't give up. If you don't get a family of birds during the first year, that's pretty common. We were fortunate enough to have a species move in and raise a family on our first year that we put this box out, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it can take a season or two. But if it goes too long, 4, 5, 6 years, you may want to think about moving that nest box to somewhere new, because the birds are probably trying to tell you that something about how that is hung, they're not too keen on. Maybe it's not facing the right direction, or maybe it's not high enough for them, but they're trying to tell you that it's not working. So you might want to try a different spot after a few years. There you have it. I hope that you are super successful with your nest boxes this season. At Wild Birds Unlimited in Barrie and Newmarket, we're certainly happy to help you find the perfect nesting box for your backyard birds, and making sure that it's hung at the right height and all of those things. We're happy to pass those tips along. You can certainly stop in anytime and talk to one of us, and we'll be happy to help you. Or send us a question or a comment or a picture on Facebook, Instagram, and we're also on YouTube. Shoot us a message. We'll be happy to answer your questions there as well. Thanks for watching. Have a great nesting season, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.